Good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning. Welcome to another edition of The Monster's Den. I am Pete Pardo, your host. Today we're actually going to talk about three very cool monster films, for the most part, that kind of bridge the gap between horror, fantasy, and science fiction. Okay, as we inch our way closer to October 31st, Halloween, All Hallows Eve. We've been bringing you more Monsters Den episodes this month as a way to kind of celebrate this spooky month that we're in, October 2020. It's been a pretty spooky year altogether. And a great way to escape everything that's been going on is to indulge in some great monster and horror and fright films. So today we're going to talk about monsters in general. I'm going to start off with the granddaddy of them all. From 1933, RKO Pictures, none other than King Kong, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this is probably the film that got me interested in monster movies when I was a kid. So, little child growing up in the late 60s and early 70s, I was enthralled with giant creatures, dinosaurs, all that sort of thing, and any kind of monster you could possibly imagine, but just imagine being, 3 years old, 2, 3, 4 years old, and watching on the screen this giant gorilla running around on Skull Island, tangling with T-Rexes and pterodactyls and giant snakes, and then coming to New York City and battling it out with subway trains and airplanes atop the Empire State Building and all that kind of stuff. I mean, just amazing special effects for the time from Willis O'Brien. He had a very young guy who studied underneath him in subsequent films called Ray Harryhausen. Ray Harryhausen actually took the stop motion photography one step further. In many of the films that he worked on, the Sinbad films, Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, Golden Voyage of Sinbad, Jason the Argonauts, Clash of the Titans, all that kind of stuff. It Came from Beneath the Sea, and, all those films that he worked on with all the various monsters that were actually taken from small models, stop motion, turned into these gigantic, terrifying creatures. Well, Willis O'Brien was the guy who really kind of jump-started that, specifically with King Kong. This film was a huge hit, released in 1933. Also, made a star out of Fay Wray. Also starred Robert Armstrong and Bruce Cabot. Just a fantastic film. That, again, not really a horror film. More of like a fantasy film, sci-fi film, but definitely some horrific elements. I know, some of the images in the film of, Kong, like, chewing, natives on Skull Island or stepping on them and squashing them to death. Even some of the monster battles, between Kong and the T-Rex or the Allosaurus, I forget exactly which one it was. Pretty crazy, pretty terrifying at the time. As Faye is screaming there underneath the little tree, right? Watching these two behemoths colliding, right? Kong breaking open the jaws, right? It's just pretty intense stuff. As a kid, this movie thrilled me. As an adult, this movie thrills me. And, they've made a bunch of sequels, and they've made some reimagining and remakes to varying, degree of success. I like the Peter Jackson film, and I actually like the most recent film that they've done, and now they're heading towards another Kong versus Godzilla battle. But there's nothing that's ever going to beat the original. Absolutely spectacular film that just never gets old. Just as enjoyable today as it was when I watched it, back in 1969, 1970. So we're going to go to 1968 for our next kind of creature feature here. This more of a sci-fi type film, but still one that I think has a lot of impact today, and that's 20th Century Fox's film Planet of the Apes. All right, starring Charlton Heston, of course, in the title role, and Roddy McDowall, obviously, in the main role on the ape side, right? And this just it's a great story to begin with, right? And this spawned many sequels. It spawned a TV show. It spawned comic books and magazines. It actually spawned a whole remake, reimagined series in recent years, which are also very good. But there's something about the whole apocalyptic nature of the original film. You know, you got Charlton Heston and, you know, originally a crew of scientists, you know, on a rocket ship. You know, things wind up happening. They wind up going like way into the future, right? And then they actually see mankind's future, which is now run by apes, intelligent talking apes. Humans are now the, you know, subspecies. And as they find that, you know, they think they're on another planet, another world, they're actually on Earth many, many years in the future. You know, the whole final scene is just absolutely, you know, terrifying when you think about it. But just a really well-acted film. Really good kind of makeup effects for all the various kind of apes here. You got orangutans, gorillas, and chimpanzees. And just iconic film. And even, you know, many of the sequels were actually really good as well. So I really, really love the Planet of the Apes series, especially the first one. All right, so this one from 1975, directed by Steven Spielberg, is probably one of the most frightening films of all time, but yet in a weird way. There's nothing like, if you like going out on the water, in the ocean, on a lake, at the beach, whatever. When you saw Jaws back in the mid-late 70s, this was pretty terrifying stuff, because this could actually happen, right? Those big great whites are out there. And when Steven Spielberg released this film back in the mid-70s, people were afraid to go in the water. I was absolutely terrified when I saw this the first time, because 1975, I was like 9 years old, and I was like, holy crap, I'm never going swimming again. And, you know, not only did they create like the biggest great white ever for this film, I mean, and this is an adventure film. It's kind of, again, this is more of a thrilling adventure film, but yet very horrific when you think about it, because it's also, you know, real to life. You know, you go out swimming on the beach off of Long Island Sound, and you go out a little too far, and next thing you know, whoosh, you're gone, right? But this shark, as we know from watching this film and all the sequels, pretty damn smart, right? He knew where the best feeding ground was. Here you had, you know, Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw. I mean, great acting in this film. All three of those characters so iconic here. And the direction is great. The special effects are groundbreaking for the time. And there's just this kind of like real, I mean, the whole like final, like what, 45 minutes of the film is just so great. You know, here these three guys are out in this little boat, out to go get and kill the great white, and or capture it, or whatever they're going to do. They got to take care of this problem, and basically the great white is kind of outsmarting them at basically every turn. Okay, and you know, the famous line in this film by Richard Dreyfuss, or no, actually by Roy Scheider, we're going to need a bigger boat, right? That's the best ever. And the final scene is just so awesome. Just so awesome. You got you know, the death scene of Robert Shaw's character. It's just a great, great film that, you know, again, if you've ever, especially if you're from like the New York or the East Coast, and you've been to these beaches, you know, along Long Island or Massachusetts, Cape Cod and whatnot, where you have like, you know, New Jersey, and you got thousands and thousands of people on the beach and in the water at the summertime. You know, something happens out there in the water, that's a lot of people you got to worry about, right? So yeah, so this is, like I said, you know, one of our viewers, loyal viewers, who's actually also appeared on the show, Jamie Laszlo. He actually yesterday on Facebook, he listed I think his top 30 scariest films of all time, and this was rightfully on there. And yeah, I absolutely agree, because sometimes, you know, it's not all about the dark and the gore and the spooky, the thrills and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes, you know, the scariest films are the ones that, you know, are pretty real, that could actually happen, right? And that's kind of the reason why Jaws always makes everybody's list. It's not your typical horror film by any means, but it is definitely a monster film. It's a pretty real life monster. And, you know, how about that? How iconic is that, right? It's, you know, taken from the opening scene of the film. Although basically you don't really see all that. You see her swimming, and then bloop, bloop, whoosh, goodbye. So anyway, there you have it. There's 3 more picks for you here today. In the Monsters Den: Jaws, Planet of the Apes, and King Kong, the big guy that started it all. I mean, you know, these are films you can really watch at any time. But even more fun to watch during Halloween season. So this is on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. If you like what you see, please click on the Ko-Fi link below in the video's description and help us out, make a contribution or donation to the channel. We greatly appreciate it. There's also links to our merch page as well as our website, www.seatranquility.org. More coming up on the Monsters Den. If you like what you've been seeing, there's much, much more coming. So we've got Chris Allo and myself over the next week. We're going to do a one episode on Italian horror classics, specifically by Fulci, Argento, and Bava. We're each going to pick one of our favorites from each of those directors and talk about that. That's coming up early this week. Also, during next week, he and I are going to talk about the Creature from the Black Lagoon trilogy from Universal. All right. Rich Catino and I are going to be doing a episode on 80s slasher films. Okay, everybody's been asking for more 80s stuff, so we got that coming up also this week. In addition, Rich and I are doing part 2 of our look at Hammer horror classics. I've got a Boris Karloff triple feature coming up either later today or tomorrow. And there's plenty more where that came from. I'm probably just so for all you Monsters Den fans who are thinking, oh no, Halloween's going to be over and Pete's going to kind of move away from the Monsters Den again for a while. I'm like in overdrive now, so I'm probably going to be going past Halloween and delivering. The original concept of the show was to deliver these each week, and I think I'm going to get back to that. And I like this whole triple feature. I like the triple feature element a little bit better. Because it allows you to kind of, instead of doing these long, in-depth looks at each film, which gives away the ending and will spoil all that kind of stuff, I kind of like doing these little more condensed episodes where we give you a brief synopsis of each film, let you guys go and watch and get all the dirt and the details, right? And just give you little factoids and things like that about each one and why you should watch these films. So I think I'm going to do that format going forward so I can bring you more of these more often. Okay, and this way at least hopefully once a week or so you guys have a little Monsters Den episode to kind of as a little bit of a distraction in between all the music that we're doing here. So hopefully you dig that, right? So again, we'll see you real soon on the Monsters Den. So be sure to come back if you dare.